Well, welcome to another edition of the Sunday Extra podcast here at Hope Church. With me this week are the Hoffords, well, two of them, Josh and Carol. Josh, give us a little bit of a bio on yourself and your family, how you guys started coming to Hope, and just some of that sort of general stuff as we get started so people can get to know who you are.
Sure. So my name is Josh Hofford, and I'm originally from the Bay Area of California. And this is my wife, Carol. And she is from a small farming town in Kansas. We've been married for 18 years, and we met in school in California, moved to Texas in 2004. We have 3 children, Samuel, who's 15, Madeline, who's 13, and Asher, who is 12. And we've been coming around Hope. I always do it by Samuel's birthday, so he's 15. So I'm going to say about 15 years.
Okay.
And I work in education in a local school district. We live in North Fort Worth and help out in the kids ministry here. And I want you to tell them what you do with our kids and worship ministry and stuff like that.
Yeah. So at church, I help out with on the worship team, and let's see, I homeschool our kids and also have a part-time job doing admin types of things.
Okay, great. Well, we just finished on Sunday a message called Hindsight is 2020, where we look back at this year, because I think 2020 was not the year any of us expected or thought it would be when we started. And I know just through conversations and things, I know that 2020 has had some unique challenges for the Hofford family. So I wonder if you just share a little bit about what some of those challenges have specifically been for you all.
So I can begin in the spring of 2020, we began to hear rumblings at work. I'll start with work. Begin to hear rumblings about this thing called COVID-19 and coronavirus. It popped up in the news a little bit like everybody else. I was not too sure what it was or where it was coming from or who was being affected. So there are a lot more questions, but didn't pay much attention to it. Then as spring break crept into the view of our school district, there began to be louder rumblings about, hey, we might not be coming back for about a week or two until this thing settles down. So we were creating curriculum based on that. And then as time got closer to spring break, it turned into there's probably a 20% chance, then to a 30% chance, then to we're not coming back at all for a couple of weeks. And so on the other side of spring break, me and my team found each other having very early to very late meetings at night virtually, and we were having to rewrite everything curriculum-wise and structural-wise, and just about everything in our school district was having to be retooled. Just like everybody else. Everybody in the nation was dealing with these things, but specific to us, there were different pieces that we were trying to put together, and so we were having to do it virtually. Now, God is very kind. He's given me an incredible team of people to work with, so that transition wasn't as hard as it could have been if relationships would have been different. But working very, very early mornings to very late nights, oftentimes 7 days a week. I think a lot of people in different industries were doing similar things, so we're not the only ones. And then my concern was that a couple of the streams of income that we have, I was concerned about one of them might be eliminated for a time being, and that did happen. But what God did is He brought something else in its place that has continued on even till now. So the original fear was that we were going to get ripped off, that our family was going to suffer. And there were some changes that happened, but we have not suffered or been ripped off at all. So those are some of the things in terms of work life. Obviously with church life, my role as helping in the energy zone with the boys changed quite a bit because we were doing a lot of things virtually. But there again, God has created such an incredible team of men who are very dedicated to the mission of what we're doing, and so they switched almost in a span of a few weeks to doing the things online and virtually. So we have one of our guys on the team. He and his dog did a lot of very very creative things with the lessons, and so the boys were able to stay engaged with that. Being able to lead my family in church in our living room, a different kind of worship experience. So those are some of the initial things that we had that I was directly involved with.
So you're kind of involved in education and training of kids from two angles. One, through your job with the school district, and then serving as leader over the boys ministry here at Hope. And you had to go from in-person only lessons and the way everything goes to practically overnight we got to come up with a virtual platform for how we're going to keep doing what we're doing, but in this new way. So that's a pretty big challenge to need to overcome in that particular industry that you're in. How about you, Carol?
Yeah, there's been several major challenges. I think one just kind of base level COVID that a lot of people faced was if you have kids, you have to figure out, okay, how do we have them home all the time and not all, go crazy or kill each other? So that was kind of a base level thing. And then also, like Josh said, he was working from home, which we are not used to. So, trying to be more quiet with kids, that's questionable. And even with big kids, I mean, we all just make noise, know. So there were some challenges that COVID brought along those lines. I think for me, the biggest challenge was just my mom's health began to decline. And I started noticing it really probably about a year ago. But then right about the time COVID hit, it became obvious that we were going to need to get help she was starting to have trouble with her memory and with just mental processing. And I just realized, we've got to pursue some medical help, even though that was the very time where all the doctors are like, don't come in here. We don't want you to come here. And so having to really make a lot of hard decisions about when do you take someone to the emergency room and when do you not, and then trying to get a diagnosis in the middle of all that. And then we just had to begin to do more and more in the way of helping my mom and helping her get treatment. And then in September, she had a big stroke, and then she ended up passing away at the end of October. So we had her memorial service just a few weeks ago. And so I would definitely say this year is not necessarily what I thought it would be like or what I'd hoped for. But we have really experienced a lot of good this year too.
Yeah. I know I would assume this is a challenge. One challenge you didn't mention, but you also had COVID in your family.
Yes.
Josh had picked it up at work, is where you suspect that it came from, and so you were dealing with that in the middle of things with your mom sort of escalating and
Yes, yeah. In fact, at the very worst time, we were sick. I think Josh had it first and then shared it with me, and our kids' cases were very mild. But yeah, when I got the news that my mom had passed away, I was just barely able to sort of be out of bed and be aware of, hey, I need to do some things now. And so yeah, definitely an added layer of stress.
Yeah. So a question I want to ask you in a minute is about how's God been growing and teaching you in the middle of this. But just a moment ago, you said there's also been good. So what are some of the good things, some of the highlights for the Hoffords that have happened during this year of 2020?
So I've got several as I've been thinking about this, and I've thought about it very deeply. I've seen our children sacrifice a lot of their wants to come to the aid and need of others. So in terms of heart attitude, number one, and following leadership in addition to that, I've saw it most clearly in my mind was when we had to sell Carol's mom's home. They don't live too far from us. So at the time, one of the big needs was around April or May, somewhere around there. We began to look at, we need to sell their home because things were becoming run down, and there was just some things I could help with, but I was not able to keep up with everything that needed to be done. So they agreed. And as Carol mentioned, her mom's health was deteriorating almost on a weekly basis. So we knew that the clock was running. And one of the good things that came in addition to my children was we leaned on some of the very precious friendships and relationships that we have at Hope. So a good friend of mine, a gentleman here who's a real estate investor, met with me and looked at the home and said, "This is what I can offer you. It'll be quick, it'll be cash." But he said, I also welcome you to look into other people, make sure that works well with them. So they did that. They looked into other things. They went with his offer. And instead of giving them 30 days, he gave them 45 to stay in the home because he was aware that there were some other things that they were dealing with. It was a fair offer. It was cash. It was very fast. So some of the things that would have normally snarled up that process was very quick. And then Carol and my children, for about 2 or 3 weeks, almost on a daily basis, in addition to everything else that she was doing and what the kids were responsible for, went to their home every day, packed up things, put things in a giveaway pile. So I saw Carol lean in to serving others and showing my children how to do that to such a high degree. I never seen anything like it. This was with COVID and everything else that's happening. She took on this other realm of responsibility, and my children had to say no to a lot of things. I mean, they also go to school part-time and do some homeschool things, and but a lot of what they were doing with HSM and some other stuff, they were doing without, but they still continued to choose to put the goals and interests of their grandmother above their own. So I would say that's one thing that stands out. Another thing is we had to, very short order, get some documents signed that would give Carol the power of attorney over medical and financial areas of her mom's life, because she was getting to the point where she was just not able to make those decisions. And so again, a dear friend that we have here, a very close friend, who was actually my boys' Sunday school teacher in the Energy Zone for many years. He's a family law attorney in town. Contacted him, told him what we needed, and he put together the paperwork, and we were able to get things taken care of. He came to their house and leaned on the relationship he had with Samuel because he had him in class, and that connected with my mother-in-law to such a degree that she was able to sign the documents, knew what she was doing, and we got all that taken care of. Now, I had men praying around the country for this, because if these didn't get done, it would make situations a lot more difficult in the future. So, I mean, I could go on and on and on, but to see God provide people who had specific areas of expertise at a time like that was just so stressful anyway, just come to our aid and do so without expecting anything in return, really showed me how much people do love us. Now, not that I ever doubted that, but normally you just don't think about that stuff. You're going around, you're going along in your day, and you don't think about these things. But when you have need, people just come out of nowhere, it was incredibly encouraging. It was strengthening for us as we walked through some more. There was more difficulty to come. So going on, when I got COVID, I want to say around October 9th. I was exposed somewhere around there. Went to church, did my daily stuff. October 12th, I began to show symptoms, and I went down pretty quick. Now, I realized, I'd given it to my family, not going to quarantine me in my room. It just wasn't going to work out the best for us like that. And then we all got sick. And our life group, sacrificed an incredible amount for us. Meals came, gift cards came, cards came. I mean, it just, when we were sick, I mean, stuff just started coming. And then when we got the news, October 20th, that Carol's mom had passed away, more stuff started coming from the same people that had already sacrificed for us already. More cards, more gifts, more meals, more and more. I mean, and I would venture to say, if something happened to us again, they would start giving again. So again, not that you ever doubt that people love you and care, because they do. But when you're really in need and they come to your aid over and over and over again, That I have not formulated the words yet to describe exactly how much that means. And then also people at work. When Carol's mom passed away that night, we got something delivered to us. So it was just an outpouring of care and love for us at that time.
Yeah, it's easy to focus on the challenge and totally miss the good. But this is one of the ways that God works is He takes care of us in the middle of the challenge. And then also relationships that you have, the community that you have around you, you appreciate the relationships and enjoy them. But then when the challenges come, that's when you really need them. And then if you have done a good job of building relationships and community, and you have been serving and sacrificing for others, like I know both of you have for years, then the moment when you have needs, then they turn around and with joy and gladness serve and sacrifice for you, as you've been mentioning. So what are some of the lessons or the things that God has taught you this year as you walk through these challenges?
I've got two, but then I'd like to hear from you. One, it relates back to a piece of wisdom, a piece of counsel that I heard somebody give to somebody else. And when you graduate from college, don't make a decision on where you live based on the job, make a decision where you live based on the church. I never heard that before, but now I can see the wisdom in that because, again, planning yourself long-term with a group of people that really take the Bible seriously, they're going to come and take care of you. And by extension, that's really God taking care of you. So I would say that that's one. And then two, God meant us in a very specific way. When Carol was desperately sick with COVID, she rolled over one day, I think it was on a Thursday. She said, I think you better call Jerry Roberts. And I thought, we're going to call Jerry for, he's going to pray for us or get some help or something. She said, we need to make arrangements for when my mom passes away. He's going to know who to call and stuff. So I did, I think that day. And then that following Tuesday, she ended up passing away. So God had prepared us for that. Again, just those are just two, again, of many. But God spoke specifically, I think, to you about the need to reach out to somebody. So when we got the call on Tuesday morning, I already had a contact ready to go. So we have some things ready to have it taken care of.
Yeah, I think for me, one couple come to mind. One is just that even in really hard situations, there are still opportunities to grasp. And a practical reminder of that is during COVID, when we were so disappointed about this was canceled and that's not going to happen and you can't see your friends and so many things to kind of be disappointed about or discouraged about, my kids and I started going on bike rides. And the weather this spring was beautiful. I mean, yes. We rarely get a great spring in Texas, and we did. And I have so many great memories of riding around town with my kids. And, when your kids are little, you're like, am I just going to survive till they grow up? But our kids are getting to the age now where you can kind of see the time is ticking the other way. Like you really want to buy up every opportunity you can to spend time together. And so I just had, no matter how hard things were, it was just like we had some great times this year, spending time together that we wouldn't have had we been doing all the things, right? And then one other huge lesson for me that God has really, I think, put a big stone, an Ebenezer stone in my heart about is I was talking with a younger gal sometime early fall, and she was going through a hard thing, and I gave her this advice. I said, when you go through difficulty, that is God's invitation to you to draw closer to Him. And when I said that, I had no idea just how hard things were going to get. And when things started getting harder and harder, God kept bringing that back to my mind. And so almost daily, I would remember, you said this. So, it's time to really lean into what the Lord has for you. And I think that really helped me stay on track and not just totally lose it.
Yeah, I think we all need, a mission to drive forward, even in the middle of the difficulties. And, it's funny, sometimes I have to be careful what I tell people. And one of the funniest things is somebody comes back and tells me what I said them, and then when the Lord wants to use that on me,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the first time that happened is very vivid memory for me in college. This guy that I was discipling and working with, and I thought he's not getting any of this. And then I had this really something happened. I don't even remember what it was, but I was really down. And he comes back and starts, well, you said this, and this. And I'm like, he listened. And then that means I got to do it now too. So, but that, even just having that, it helps you drive forward in the middle. So you guys have had a number of challenges that you've walked through in this year, as the rest of the world is. Anything that you would like people to know, if there's somebody out there listening or watching this who is in the middle of a challenge right now and they're feeling overwhelmed, and I don't know if I can make it, or it's too hard, whatever they might be feeling, just what kind of encouragement would you give to them given what you've walked through?
I think one word for me would just be faithfulness, because we've learned through God's word that that's really what he wants, is for us to be faithful. He doesn't want us to be perfect or always have it together. But like Josh mentioned earlier, we've really seen the blessing and the benefit of just staying faithful with our church family. And just the fact that we've stayed here and stuck with it for so long has allowed us, like you said, to build relationships that we can really lean on when we are hurting or we have needs. And so I guess, the thing I would want to say is, even when you feel like withdrawing or isolating yourself, being faithful to the church and to those relationships really pays huge dividends in the long run.
That's good.
So I think there's a few things for me. One, choose faithfulness over happiness. Typically right now, you'll find the culture, society around you will really push you to be happy at the expense of faithfulness. So if you don't like your job, or don't like where you're going to church, or you don't like this or that, you just leave and find something that's going to make you happy. Well, I'll tell you, if we would have chosen that instead of being faithful, the last few months would have been terribly, terribly difficult. Now, God is God, and he can do what he wants. Maybe it would have not been that way, but choosing faithfulness created some opportunities and brought help that probably wouldn't have been there otherwise. So I would say that. So if you're in a difficult spot, choose faithfulness to the right things rather than happiness. Now, sometimes they go together. The other thing that I would say, and I was reminded of this very, very early in COVID, because again, like everybody else, I have some anxious thoughts and I had some worries too, because there just wasn't a lot that was known at the beginning. You
Right.
don't know what you're dealing with. And so that was a very understandable reaction and emotion that I, along with a lot of other people, had. But I was watching a 2 or 3 minute clip of a pastor who's part of our network in California. And he went through Philippians 4:6-8, and he did it in a way that I had never seen before, and it stuck with me, that's actually a system of prayer if you look at the first part of that verse. And so it says, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and petition with thanksgiving make your requests known to God. So the part of that, first part is, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer. So prayer is just tell God what's going on, tell him what you think, tell him what you'd like to have happen, or kind of what you're reading. By prayer and supplication, ask God over and over again what you want to have happen. So with thanksgiving, but thank God for what he's already done. Thank you for what he's given to you and that he listens. So I thought, okay, well, that's something I can do, right? God, I'm really scared and anxious right now. I don't know what's happening. How I'd like things to work out is this, but I thank you that you always give me what's best, or however you want to say it. But that was extremely encouraging to me, to know that God's word actually provides a system of prayer that you can talk to God, and he really wants you to do that. And we've seen him come through in some very obvious ways. A picture that's coming to mind right now as we're talking, speaking of friendships and relationships, some of the good has come out, and encouragement that I want to give people is if you choose faithfulness and you take God at his word, he will oftentimes answer through people And one of the people that answered for us was a good friend of mine, a gentleman that I know in our group right now. I was calling and texting him a few times when Carol was really sick with COVID. She really had a tough go of it. And so I contacted him because his wife had COVID too with some similar symptoms. And I said, okay, here's what we're dealing with. And he kind of gave me some thoughts about, hey, here's what we tried, here's what didn't work. And then one day he just shows up at our house with something with a remedy that they found very helpful. And I can still see him now opening my front door, and there he is, with his mask on, 6 feet away because we're all still sick. And he just left the thing right on my front door. He and his son came. I don't know how far away they were. They don't live in our part of town, but and he didn't ask. I didn't ask him to do it. He just knew we had a need, and he showed up with the goods. So God will show up with the goods, and I think somebody else has said this: is God's best is choice. God doesn't give his children second best. So one of the things I learned when I was praying during that time, I'm not bossing God around or telling him what to do, but because of the kindness that Jesus showed on the cross, God listens and he answers.
Yeah. Well, and life is the training program that God has for us. The things that are on our plate are the things that he's using in our lives to grow us and train us. So this has been a challenging year, but it's also been a good year. And it's been a good year in the sense if we think about the good that's happened, there's been good things. But it's also been a good year in that because in the middle of the challenges, God is working and he's growing us and he's changing us. So thank you so much for sharing some of the challenges that you've walked through and just what God has done in the middle of that, some of the new perspectives that you guys have grown in during that time. And thank you for being a part of today's podcast. 2020 wasn't the year that we all woke up and thought it would be when we woke up on January 1st, but it is a year that God is using to grow us and train us and develop us. So we want to invite you to join us next Sunday. We're going to start a brand new series. It's going to be 2021, and we're going to start a new series called The New You. We're going to take a look at 5 different elements that we can sort of hit the refresh button on as we begin this new year. So thank you for being a part of today, and we hope to see you next Sunday.